All right, welcome back, everybody, to the ROI Online Podcast. And today, I'm excited to introduce you to Wes Gay. Wes Gay is a gentleman that I met through the Story Brand Guide Network, and he's actually a Story Brand agency now. But this is another interview in a series of Story Brand topics or Story Brand Guide and agency interviews. Wes, welcome to the ROI Online Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I'm glad to be here.
Hey, I was watching some of you've done a TEDx talk, and I think you have another video on your website, Push Pay, and I was really enjoying your style and your presentation way. You seem very comfortable on stage. Where'd you learn that? Is you just started dancing when you were a little kid, when you were young? Or?
Well, I learned it in three places. The first was church. So my dad's a minister, a music minister. So I grew up in churches. And the inevitable thing is when your dad is on staff at a church, you're going to be on stage at some point. It just is like you're the easiest. I used to joke, I got voluntold into a lot of things as a kid. So you wind up on stage. I started playing guitar when I was young, so I wound up being on stage and kind of leading people, et cetera. And some of it was I just have a knack for it. It's a strength for the Enneagram folks. I'm a 3, so 3s tend to be kind of thrive in the settings. And then when I was in college, I was in the music department, and I don't know why, by the way. I got an undergrad degree in music, and I have no idea why. But when I was in college, I was in the music department, and I was in a performing group for 2 years that traveled a ton. And the guy who was the dean of our department had been the founder and kind of the head guy of a Christian music group for 35 years, probably. They traveled all over the world. I mean, they did 10,000 shows. It was, it was a big deal. Well, that guy could command a room like nobody I've ever seen. Like the back half of the room could be on fire, and he could make you forget you're smelling smoke and make you cry about some story within 30 seconds. It was unbelievable. And so I got a master class in watching this guy for a very long time. And then the job I had through every summer in college, and it was a full-time job out of college, the guy who ran that, same thing. I mean, he could command a room. He had been on stages for 30 years. And I just watched people who did it really well and used my natural strengths, but also mimicked what I saw these people who'd been doing it for longer than I've been alive at that point, watched what they did. And I thought, okay, what can I learn and how do I use what I'm naturally good at, but also make it better by watching people who are way ahead of the game than I
Yeah,
am.
I think that's excellent. I see that the biggest challenge for most entrepreneurs or the folks that listen to this podcast, the biggest challenge they face is how to succinctly communicate their vision to their team, the value to their prospects, and where they're going next with their customers. That's just, we all struggle with that, and I don't know why. Maybe we just been industrialized over time, but I think that's the secret sauce to being a great leader. And
I agree. It's not easy either. I mean, I think part of the reason behind that is you and I know this, Steve, being in the world we're in, making something simple is so much harder than making it complicated. It's so much harder. And I think at the end of the day, unless we discipline ourselves to take the time to do the hard work and the heavy mental lifting of making it succinct and really making it punchy and catchy, then it won't catch on. I think one of the great examples of this in culture, regardless of where you fall on the religious spectrum, is a guy named Andy Stanley. He's a pastor of a church in Atlanta, Georgia. They run 35-ish thousand a weekend, more in kind of this coronavirus streaming era. And he still spends 6 to 8 hours a week, every week, preparing one talk, right? I mean, he's spending a ton of time. But when you watch him, even when he does his leadership talks, because he speaks at a lot of leadership events for corporate leaders as well, he's really good at taking big ideas and packing them into memorable phrases. And really, but that is hard, right? There's a reason that he sets himself apart. And he had a great podcast conversation with Don Miller on this, on the Storybrand podcast a while back, about all the work that goes into it. And it's work. And I think a lot of times as leaders, we either have the tendency to think, I'm too busy to do this, or I'm just going to get up and wing it. And both of those things are part of the recipe for disaster when it comes to trying to communicate to folks.
Winging it. I'm the heroes. I feel the invisible heroes of the American economy are the entrepreneurs. And you think about it, they're there's so many businesses with 20 or less employees. It's more than you know. It's like 98.5% of the American economy. Businesses have 20 or less employees. And so that means that
Wow.
that leader of that organization has to wear many hats.
Hmm.
And you can't be an expert in all those hats. So you wear your natural tendencies are on, let's say, three hats.
Hmm.
But the other ones, you have to wing
Uh-huh.
and you just have to, all right, I'm putting a hat on. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm supposed to be in charge. So you march in there. And I see that so often. And I think that, when I think of the biggest lever that they could spend some time on and invest, because they have very limited time,
Hmm.
the messaging piece is the biggest lever that can give them the most power in wearing all those hats if they could just get the messaging clear.
Hmm. Yeah, if you know how, I always tell people that if you get the words right, if you can get the words right, everything else falls into place. So as a leader, yeah, it helps you be better at marketing, better at sales, but it helps you better communicating with your team, with your customers, with vendors, with other leaders in the community, with people online. I mean, being able to communicate, it's always been valuable, but especially in the days we're in, the ability to communicate may be the single most important skill that a leader can develop, because you're having to do it at a relentless pace. And so doing it with your team, with your family, with your family and with your friends, with everybody we're constantly communicating with, if you can get better at communicating, you're going to be much more successful as a leader in the long run.
Totally. It's a big, long road I need to hoe
Hmm.
myself. So I was looking at your background information. So you and I have a similar background, and there was in 2016 you were talking about you were unemployed.
Hmm.
How'd you get there? I mean, obviously you're very talented. I mean, it seems like people would want to have you on their team. What was
Sure.
going on?
But that is a loaded question, so I'll keep it short. Basically, in early 2016, I was working in a church, and uh, the very short version is, sometimes in churches or in businesses, anybody's been business seen it. There sometimes, especially when there's somebody new in the leadership,
Hmm.
occasionally there can be casualties as a part of that leadership transition. And the best way to describe it is I was a casualty of that of a season, and there's frankly been other casualties since. And so what ends up happening is in churches, when you get fired, particularly with churches, probably unlike any other industry, you wind up wearing this scarlet letter F on your resume, on your LinkedIn, on your Facebook, on your shirt, on your, like, everywhere. If we're fired, and everybody gets allergic to it, and nobody wants to hear what happened, why it happened. They don't want details. They just assume, oh, because you're fired, you're skewing the story in your perspective, in your favor, whatever. And so that work, churches and nonprofits of the world I knew, kept applied in a ton of places. But again, that scarlet letter F carries ahead of you before anything else. I applied for, honestly, at Dave Ramsey, couldn't make it past the second interview. I think they had trouble getting fired. And so it was this constant challenge of, where do I get hired? How do I just get something going? And finally, late 2016, October 2016, I saw where Don Miller, who I've been following since the mid 2000s. I mean, I read Blue Like Jazz when it came out. I've got on my desk right here, A Million Miles in a Thousand Years, that Don wrote, which is one of my favorite books I think I've ever read. So I followed him. I even saw Blue Like Jazz in theaters. I'm one of like 12 people who can say that in this country. But anyways, so I followed him a long time, and I knew about Story Brand. We had looked at it at the church I'd been on staff at, about maybe doing the live workshop the year before, and they start offering this copywriter certification. And I literally thought two things. One, nobody's going to hire me. So what if I just hire myself until I get a real job, was my thought.
Hmm.
And my second thought was, I don't exactly know what a copywriter is or does, because I'd always been in churches. We never had them. You don't talk about them, because it's just churches. There's only 5 churches in the country big enough to have somebody like that on staff. And so I thought, I've always been a decent writer, a decent communicator. I mean, more than once in my kind of tenure, if anything at work was ever had to be communicated that was a difficult thing to do, they'd call me to write it. I mean, I remember one time working at a church, one of the most beloved people on staff got fired, and it was unfortunate. Everybody in the church loved him, the staff loved him, and he only got fired because some old guys in the church didn't like him. That was literally the reason. A young family, whatever. And so they were like, "Hey, Wes, we need you to write the email explaining to the church why he got fired." And I'm like, I'm like 4 levels deep in the org chart. Why are you calling me? But the executive pastor is my boss. So they said, you're the only one on staff who can communicate this kind of stuff. And so I knew that kind of going in. I knew I could write. I knew I could communicate ideas. I could communicate them usually pretty clearly and effectively. And so I thought, well, let me give this a shot. At the time, I was talking to a church in North Central Florida about being basically a part-time something. I thought, I'll be part-time with them until they're ready to bring me full-time. But in the meantime, I'll supplement my income with the story brand thing, right? I mean, you were there, Steve. It was the Wild West of what was going on back in those days. And so I went home. I did it I drove to Nashville, don't tell Dave Ramsey, put $5,000 on a credit card because I didn't have any money. We lived in my mother-in-law's house, had a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. Drove to Nashville from Atlanta, Georgia on Monday morning so that I wouldn't have to spend money on a hotel the Sunday night. Get there in time for the event. I mean, I had forgotten this until probably 6 or 8 months ago. I stopped at a grocery store at some point, I forget when, and bought a loaf of bread, peanut butter, and bananas. And I literally thought I can eat bananas and have peanut butter sandwiches if nothing else. I don't have to spend any more money. I can spend $6 on all that or $8, whatever, as opposed to meals for 2 or 3 days. So get home on the Tuesday night, and by Wednesday morning, I'm like, great, I've got a $5,000 credit card bill now on top of everything else you're trying to do, on top of being unemployed. What do I do? And then I just started, and then it exploded pretty quickly, and it's just been this kind of rocket ship ever since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how we can't get hired because we don't fit really. And so we decide, all right, I'm going to step out and do it on my own. And so that's the impending event. You just described what's called the event where the hero of the story learns that the status quo will not continue. And then we watch them struggle and wrestle with the new reality of what's going on. Talk to us about some of your missteps.
Yeah.
Did you have any? I'm just assuming.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I'm good at is blowing smoke. So in other words, I can talk a good game until I have the good game to back it up. So, and that's a skill. I mean, I get it. It's hard to, not everybody's that way, good and bad. It has its strengths and it has its weaknesses. So I was able to leverage that and kind of get in and not have many issues, especially early on. There was this kind of hustle of, I've just got to keep going. I got to keep moving. Every day I think about how can I get paid today and what can I do today to help me get paid tomorrow. And it was just that relentless thing for a while. And then once it kind of levels out and once you figure some stuff out, you're not necessarily having to be that way all the time. You still have a hunger, but your perspective changes because you're a little bit smarter. You've got some experience. The thing just shifts over time. It happens. It's not bad. I'd say the biggest misstep has been, like most people I know who are in marketing, is not being my own best client, right? So I know so many people like you, and we know hundreds of other folks in the store brand world who do incredible work for clients, and then we forget how to use language when we have to talk about ourselves, and we forget how to do websites, and we forget how to write content calendars, we forget how to write Instagram. Like we just forget, even though we can do it all day, just like this for clients. So I think that's been the biggest misstep, has just been not making the continual investment back in my own business, both from a time perspective, from a strategy perspective, doing those things that help grow it. There's no excuse for it. It just is. That's probably the hardest thing about being a marketer and running an agency, is doing for yourself what you tell other people to do.
Totally. There was this time where I had to really draw a line in the sand with my team, that we have to focus on our work. Our work needs to be the best example of what we preach. We should be, anytime we're talking with a client, we need to go, here, let me show you an example, and show our work as the example. But it took maybe 6 to 9 months to get my team to, I don't know, do you think it's a confidence issue where you doubt yourself that you can do it on your own? What is it?
I think it's that. I also think it's the tension that so many business owners have, which is, why would I, and I think it's a subconscious thing, why would I spend time doing stuff for me when I could be doing stuff in more direct sales and client work that gets me paid? So I think a lot of it is a revenue tension of, we don't necessarily feel like the investment we're making from a time and energy and sometimes a financial perspective is really going to pay off when we think about all of the things we have to get done. It's finish this proposal, we got to do this for a client, we got to send this. I mean, I think it's getting clarity on, okay, maybe I need to delegate more things out, for example, so I can then go focus on this. I think it's the ongoing pressure that entrepreneurs face of, I've always got to do stuff that help, get paid, right? The mortgage is due, rent's due, payrolls due, all that stuff. And I'm reading a book right now by a guy named Marcus Sheridan called They Ask You Answer. And he, I don't know if you've heard him or heard his story, read his book, but he talks about this idea this idea. And he got started working at a pool dealership in Roanoke, Virginia. And they sell and install swimming pools. Well, in about 2008, when the market tanked, nobody was buying a swimming pool, particularly in Virginia at the time. So somewhere he started hearing about HubSpot, which I know y'all are a big partner with HubSpot. And he started investing in inbound marketing. And he thought it was crazy at first. Like, why are we writing articles on our website about swimming pools, right? That seems like a crazy investment when we should be making sales calls and doing direct marketing, all this. Well, over time, it has just paid off in the millions of dollars over the last decade. I mean, they can attribute literally millions of dollars to some articles they've written 10 years ago. And the ongoing tension, I think, of entrepreneurship is, you're having to constantly shift gears between short game and long game.
There you go.
Investing in yourself and in your company and in content and in your own marketing, particularly in the kind of service world that we're in, knowledge work, it's a long play. And so it's having to shift gears from what are we doing over the long term? How are we going to survive the short term? How do we do things today that bring clients 3, 6, 12, 9, 12 months down the road? And then how do we finish this deliverable so we can send this invoice today, right? That kind of stuff. I mean, it's just this ongoing tension that you're constantly having to shift gears. And for most small business, like you said, where everybody on the team to a degree is a generalist, those switches can be exhausting because you're constantly having to switch modes, switch perspectives, switch ideas, switch strategies, everything to go from long-term to short-term. And it can be relentless.
I found that my clients struggle with that same concept. And that's one of the reasons I wrote my book. But it's, you think about the accounts that you manage or the clients that you have. There's this point in their life cycle. And if there was a life cycle of a business, there's this point where you go, I have an idea. Hey, it's starting to, I mean, you have a good idea. You start to get customers, clients, you get some traction.
Yeah.
But there's this point where you have to confront, I need to take care of the short game, but I need to start investing in the long game. And in working with clients, we have to help them see the same thing because they're focused on immediate results. But we also need to build a foundation and the assets that are going to carry us forward.
Yeah.
Which clients, talk to us about struggle in those conversations that you've had?
Yeah. Well, I would, to piggyback on what you just said, I view it as going to the grocery store versus having a farm. So I grew up around farmers. My granddad was a peanut farmer in South Georgia. We lived in South Florida till I was 9, which has giant farms, big commercial produce farms, et cetera. And then we moved to South Alabama, which is known as the peanut capital of the world. 25% of the world's peanuts are grown within a 90-mile radius of my hometown.
Yeah.
See, you never know what you're going to learn on the ROI Online podcast.
That's right.
We even have a national peanut festival. There's a peanut queen. It's a whole thing, right? School shuts down for a week. There's a fair. I could go. Anyways, well, the thing about farming is we're doing this, recording this in April of 2020. Usually around March and April in the Southeast is planting season for peanuts and cotton. Right? Peanuts and cotton are huge still in the South. And so you have to do all this work and you prepare the soil and you plant the seeds and then you just wait. And you wait like 6 months and you hope hurricane season doesn't devastate your crops. You hope you get the right amount of rain at the right time. You hope you don't get too much, but you hope you don't have a drought. You may hope you don't have any kind of bugs or any kind of insects or any kind of disease. There's this constant. But then in October, you start, you go and you till the peanuts up and you flip them upside down. It's how you pick them. And then you wait, let them dry out for a couple of days, take a peanut combine, you pick them, and then you sell them, right? So you've worked for 6 or 8 months before you ever see a payday. I think or I could go to the grocery store and buy a bag of peanuts now.
Mhm.
I think a lot of us, and this is not a cultural thing so much as it's a business thing, where we're thinking about how do I just run to the grocery store now and get that quick hit and make that money, get the thing that I'm after, which is revenue, versus how do I take that long game approach and say, okay, I can go to the grocery store, but I also need to be planting seeds now so that in 6 months I can start harvesting those returns. In 12 months I can harvest some returns. I mean, I've literally had conversations with people who said, I saw you this at a year ago or a year and a half ago, or you did. I mean, it just happened. You just never know over time. So when I say when working with clients, it's getting them to realize that it's you've got to do both simultaneously if you want a thriving business over the long haul. You can have a hockey stick growth quickly, but then it dives off and then you're back off the cliff again. But if you want a long-term healthy business, you've got to be able to do both.
Yeah. So talk to us some maybe the biggest lessons that you've learned,
Mm-hmm.
other than you need to invest in your own content, so to speak. What's some
Mm-hmm.
other lessons that you've learned?
Sure. Uh, Generosity is a competitive advantage. Always. I mean, we're seeing it right now in the season of coronavirus. The most
Totally.
generous brands are winning. But there's always that always rings true. Just how it plays out is a little different. How I got started, remember I had been unemployed for 6 months when I became store brand certified. Didn't know what a copywriter was. Had no idea how to market myself. I had been a freelancer on some gigs, made a few $100 here and there over the years, but nothing substantial. Nothing I think over 1,000 at any one time. And so I was like, how am I going to make a full-time income? Well, I go to this. My thought was, I'm just going to answer questions, right? I'm going to, like most people, I'm going to steal advice from John Maxwell. And John Maxwell, one of the things he said is always try to bring value to people. That's a big kind of hallmark, touchstone of his teaching. And I thought, okay, how can I do that? And so there was a Slack channel at the time for alumni who had gone through the story brand workshop. And there was a group in there called Peer Feedback. And I'm like, well, these are my people. They understand story brand. The book is a year away from being out. The podcast was brand new. If anybody's going to hire me, it's going to start here. So I thought, I'm just going to show up and answer questions. I'm not going to say, hey, my name is Wes. I'm story brand certified. Oh, by the way, here's how I would fix it if you're my client. I just answered it. And then if the conversation went well, I'd move to a direct message, say, hey, I'd give them my one-liner, schedule a call, and then it may or may not take off as a client. That's how I got 3 clients within 6 weeks, maybe a half dozen clients. I forget now, but just generosity is always an advantage. So look to be ways to be generous, because especially if you're in a kind of a knowledge work situation, it also helps to demonstrate your authority. Right. And this is something you and I know well from StoryBrand is being the guide means you are the authority. And in today's world, you can really set yourself apart by showing your authority, not just talking about your authority. So get on a video and explain to me, if you're a realtor, why a house is priced this way, or explain to me a mortgage process, or just explain what's going on in the market as a financial advisor. Just demonstrate your authority by sharing your expertise. Never be afraid to be generous. I don't think, unless it's, corporate secrets like the Coca-Cola recipe, or the Chick-fil-A formula for breading their chicken, most things are not going to hurt you in the long run. Almost everything you can share, I think, will help set you apart. So generosity is a competitive advantage, is a big one. People first, anything, as much as you can put people first, do it. Make sure you take care of yourself, right? I mean, you are a people. Your family is a people. So make sure you take care of them. One of the challenges, particularly in the way I'm set up where everything's remote, is one of the lessons I've learned is how do you set boundaries? Like if you have an office and you've got a team and all that, sometimes that structure is built in, kind of baked in for you. But when you do work from home, or you do work remotely, or you do primarily work alone, you have control. And it's a tension of flexibility and control. So you have control of your schedule and you have flexibility, but you also have to have the discipline to make sure you get everything done. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about lately is I'm convinced in order to scale even more, how do I quantify what I, Wes, am really good at? And that's hard to put actual language around it, and then simplify that even more to the point where it's formulaic, or I could teach somebody else so that I could find somebody like I was and say, here's everything I've learned having worked with 100 store brand clients. Here's everything I've learned writing 200,000 words of copy for store brand projects. Like, what are the quantifiable objective pieces that I can put in place to then help me grow? And that's not a new concept. I mean, that's why McDonald's is so big, is they have a franchise model. Everything's documented. Everything's formulaic. That can work I think in any business. Stealing from Michael Gerber and the E-Myth, but I think it can. It's just in our work and more creative style work, quantifying that is hard. It's really, really hard. But I think the more you invest in that idea, I think the better opportunity you're going to have to scale, because now you're taking what you're uniquely gifted at and able to teach others and really multiply your strengths. So you can continue hiring and delegating out your strengths and your weaknesses. So your weaknesses are covered, but you're even able to accelerate what you do really well because you have more people involved in what's going on.
Yeah, you're talking about a point in the business where you go through this struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who do I think I am that I could start delegating and having an expectation of others to do the stuff that I can probably do better,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a break on your
Yep.
scalability. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to grow in confidence that you can delegate it. And here's the communication challenge. Communicate a way to do it, but also be confident enough to let them put their spin on it, because you may
Mm-hmm.
get another flavor that you didn't expect that's way better than the way you were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That I struggled with, I knew I needed to write a book,
Mm-hmm.
but here's what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to write a regurgitation of the same old dry books that were already out there.
Yeah.
It needed to have my own unique perspective and value, but it took time for me to go recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed that other people have this image of you, or when they talk to you, they have this expectation of you that you're more talented than you give yourself credit
Mm-hmm.
for? Have you had that?
Yeah, and it's not new. I mean, again, when you've been on stages, I mean, there was a stretch for probably 10 years where I was on a stage 2, 3, 4 times a week. I mean, there were stretches, some weeks and some months and even years in college and after, I'd be on the stage 5, 6, 7 times a week. I mean, I just was constantly out there. And when you're, especially in churches and other venues, when you're in front of people doing your thing, you kind of open yourself up to everybody's thoughts. Even
Right.
sometimes they're like, "Hey, that's great." Sometimes they want to correct you and they don't know what they're talking about. So in some ways, I was used to both sides of it. People, the criticism and the critiques, and then the people teach or complimenting. And one of the things that's helped me is by listening to the feedback people give. Right. So for a long time, I had a hunch I was good on stage, but you always feel insecure about it. I don't care how
Totally.
long you've been doing it, you're always insecure. But I started listening to how people would respond positively to different things I did, whether it's part of my job or outside of my roles and on the staff and places. And I noticed that there was almost every time people were not talking about me being on a stage, they would say things like, "Hey, that video you made was great." They would talk about the deliverable, the thing I did.
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to the things that are my core strengths, they were identity statements. It was, "You're a great speaker. You command the stage really well." It was more about my identity as opposed to, "That was a great talk," or "That
Mm-hmm.
was a great thing. That thing you did was great." It was more opposed to who you are.
That's excellent.
And so I started listening, and I still do it. I will listen in to hear how people say it. And I don't think for them it's intentional. I think it's just a natural response that all of us have when we see somebody in their strengths and see somebody doing what they're really good at, is how we tend to respond. So for me, it's been listening to how people say it. And then um, other times realizing, hearing people say, "Hey," they maybe have certain expectations. I also want to make sure, like this, I want to kind of demystify it if I can. And by that, I mean saying, "Hey, well, the reason this happened, or the reason I did this, was because of I also did these 12 things that you didn't see, or these 15 things that weren't commented in a Slack group, or I had to read these 3 books and then did this in, whatever it is." And so, for example, I was supposed to be at an event in Tampa in March. It got pushed to 2021. And by the favor of the Lord, it is in Puerto Rico in 2021. So I totally looked out there. But one of the things I was going to do was a one-liner workshop for the Story Brand, which you've probably done, I'm sure, ROI Online, where we help people develop a pitch. I'd never done a full, hour, 90-minute session on that. So I thought, okay, I got to prepare for this. So I read a book about how movies called Jaws in Space. And it's about how, it's written by a guy named Sid Field, and it's how he's a guy who teaches screenwriting. In fact, his book, which I've got somewhere around here on screenwriting, is the book that the Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame writers used to write Infinity War and Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally followed his formula. But anyways, so I thought, I've got to read that book. I'm going to read 2 or 3 other books. I'm going to work it out. Like, I had all this in mind as to how I was going to do all this preparation, so that when I did get in front of a room and I taught it, it just felt spontaneous and kind of second nature.
Mm-hmm.
But it's and this, again, not new. The reason you see great musicians is because of all the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours they spend honing their craft and being great. And so just want to make sure that there's expectation that people have of, like anything, if you want to be better, if you want to be successful, if you want to grow your talent, you are born with a lot of it, I think, but it's also about what you do with it.
Totally. I think sometimes we look for what's our purpose in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we're going through that process that you're talking about, we can start to see that people recognize this value that you have, but you have to first give yourself permission to accept it, and then to own your way into it, or like do
Mm-hmm.
the work. I call it, there was this promotion called Be Like Mike by Gatorade. Do you remember
Oh
that?
yeah.
I want to
Uh-huh.
be right. And so you drink the Gatorade and you be like Michael Jordan. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the epiphany for me is that we need to be more like Mike Rowe and do
Yeah.
the dirty jobs for a
Uh-huh.
long time before you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the piece that everyone misses. You can't just walk on stage and wing it. There's
Yep.
all this Mike Rowe dirty work stuff that you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Mike we need to be like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just getting in there, and I mean, I've heard Mark Cuban say it a million times. Just do the work. Like
Mm-hmm.
he said, you can't. There's a lot of things you can't control in business and entrepreneurship, but you can absolutely control your effort and your output, and the amount of input you put in. So, what are you doing to increase the quality? I mean, I talk to guides particularly all the time, and one of the things I've done just in my business is these on-site 1-day kind of what we call them strategy sessions with clients. And I do it because, for one, I like it. 2, it just fits what I'm good at. I'm good at just in the moment, feeling like I'm off the cuff, just, being able to come up with stuff really, really quickly and just keep moving. I mean, that's kind of my element. But I've talked to other guides who said, you clarified in 3 minutes what took me 2 hours to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've done this. I've done a version of this kind of thing for 10 or 15 years now.
Right.
And so it's realizing just even if you're in kind of a similar industry as somebody else, in kind of a similar world, you may be at different stages, or you have different strengths, and it's figuring out how to best leverage who you are and stop trying to be somebody else. Right? I mean, it's nobody wins the comparison game. No, everybody's a loser in that one.
No, that's a big trap. That's a booby trap.
Mm-hmm.
That so I think about the story brand framework, and to be able to clarify something really quick,
Mm-hmm.
there's there's this empathy thing that you have to
Mm-hmm.
have. And so if you think about, you know, in the framework, you start with, all right, who's the hero? What do they want?
Mm-hmm.
And you go this way. I like to start at the end. I like to do it
Yeah.
backwards.
Hmm.
And this first identify the transformation that we're seeking.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's just put ourselves in their shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that they're insecure about? What's this
Mm-hmm.
hero insecure about? And then it goes, oh, it would make sense to me that I'm scared about making a bad decision and looking
Mm-hmm.
like an idiot in front of
Mm-hmm.
my superior. So
Yeah.
I'm going to delay this decision,
Mm-hmm.
and then start addressing that internal thing that they would never say. But if you just put yourself in their shoes and think about it,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and then it starts to unfold from there for me. How about
Mm-hmm.
you?
Yeah, I mean, empathy is king. And when you think about business, you think about the journey through the lens of your customer. and you start to see things through their eyes, it helps clarify a lot. It shifts the focus, like we always do with clients with StoryBrand. It shifts the focus away from me and towards the customer, and thinking about, what are they dealing with? Well, no wonder they have this problem. No wonder they feel this way. No wonder they maybe aren't buying from us, because what they actually need is this, but what we're talking about is this.
Mm-hmm.
And empathy is one of the greatest investments, the greatest things you can figure out how to do as a business in the entire journey of a customer, from marketing and advertising to sales to customer relationships and beyond. Thinking about everything through what your customer's dealing with. For example, I did a sales training for a company back in January of 2020, excuse me, and they sell technology to churches. They're about $1 billion in revenue. They're huge, and a lot of their team was young, and they were, they hadn't. This is their first kind of foray into this industry, and so one of the things I told them was, I said, "How many of you in the last year have had deals stall out in March, April, July, November, or December? So 5 months out of the year." And like everybody in the room raised their hand. I said, "Do you want to know why?" And I said, "What?" I said, "Because in March and April, churches are preparing for Easter. July, everybody's on vacation. November and December is crazy busy with holidays and events and whatever." I said, "So no wonder they're not responding to you, right? You have to see things through their lens and their eyes and their calendar and their schedule and their daily pace and their weekly pace and their quarterly pace, because that will radically shift. One, it should limit your frustration, and it will, no wonder they're not responding right now, because they're running 100 miles an hour with their hair on fire. No wonder they're not responding to me." Like if I was trying to sell to a fireworks company, just don't expect them to talk to me in June, because they're selling for 4th of July, you know? But we have to think about how literally get that granular, so that we can really empathize, and one, not be frustrated, but two, better tailor what we do to best suit the people we're trying to reach.
You know, I'm I'm working on a series of blogs right now, and it's about how marketing is broken.
Hmm.
And I believe that there was this time when the term consumers became like just weaved all in the marketing language, and it changed the mindset, or the lack of empathy. You're looking
Mm-hmm.
at consumers. Well, a consumer doesn't have a face, doesn't have a
Mm-hmm.
name, doesn't have feelings, doesn't have fears. A consumer, I like to term it as, they see us as cows with credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
How can I
Yeah,
get money
that's
from
funny.
that consumer? And so
Yep.
they dehumanized marketing. Well, when it's dehumanized, then we don't care, and the
Mm-hmm.
messaging is self-centered. We're the best. We can get the money from these cows
Mm-hmm.
the fastest. But this whole thing that we're talking about is what I call HEO, human experience optimization.
I love that.
Okay, instead of SEO, which
Mm-hmm.
is less less designer marketing to appeal to robots, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
marketing is broken because people don't see people with families, with dreams, with hopes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're talking about, and that's why it's such a competitive advantage to get this right.
Mm-hmm. It is. I love human experience optimization. We live in an increasingly personalized world when it comes to marketing and sales and business, e-commerce, et cetera, with all of the tools we have and all the data we can build. You will you will always be an advantage if you can think about how to create a better experience for people. I mean, we're big Disney fans in our house. We have annual passes to Disney World that we'll go back whenever it opens again at this point. Um, but even the story of Disney World or Disneyland started because Walt Disney wanted a place where he and his daughters could both have great experiences. And then he knew that if he was that way, other parents would want to have places where both the parents and the kids could enjoy themselves. And if you know anything about the history of Disney and Disneyland, Disney World, there was a meticulous attention to detail to make sure every single facet of that experience was incredible. From, I think you can't go more than 27 steps in any Disney park without there being a trash can, because they wanted it to be clean. You never wanted to have trash in your hand and wonder where to put it. When they built Disney World, they actually built Magic Kingdom on the second story. So if you've ever been to Disney World, there's a whole tunnel system underneath the Magic Kingdom, because Walt Disney didn't want a cowboy headed to Adventureland walking through,
Hmm.
Tomorrowland, and it just creates a bad experience. So Disney, I think, is a great example of figuring out how do we create an incredible experience, literally put you in another world for a day or a week or whatever it is. How do we take that same attention to detail and that same mindset and think of all the different ways that we can create a better experience for our customers, right?
Hmm.
Most places will never think about how far apart the trash cans need to be in some kind of strategy planning session, unless you're thinking about what is every single thing a customer or a guest at our parks could deal with that we can fix. Well, trash is a big one, or restrooms, or you name it, right?
I think that I think that a lot of our clients, they know that here's where our parking lot is. So let's make sure it's manicured and
Mm-hmm.
clean. There's the front door. There's where our open hours. When they come in, there's the counter. There's the menu. It's clear in the physical world for the most part, above average, where people just naturally go, okay, we need to have things organized in aisles and put the drinks in the back so they have to walk by the chips, those things.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to our virtual world,
Mm-hmm.
our online platforms, that's not they're not really connecting all the dots about what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about. And
Right.
that's what you and I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our job for our clients is to do for them what they do for their people, which is help them figure out the path they need to go and help them figure out the next steps that they need to take. And just like you said, connect those dots. We all need an outside perspective. We all need somebody else to say, "Hey, have you thought about it this way?" Or "You're actually missing these 3 or 5 things in your plan," or "What if you change this?" And making those connections, because so many of us as entrepreneurs are so in the weeds of our business every day, it can be really hard to pull back and see the whole landscape and see everything from the parking lot to the front entrance to the reception desk to the meeting space to the event space to the shelf to whatever it is.
Mhm. So, folks that are listening to this, maybe they're interested in what you do. What are the best kind of clients? What are the clients
Sure.
that you love to work with?
I've worked with over 100 folks in the story brand world in the last 3.5 years. And my best clients come to me because, one, they want story brand. So they have awareness of it. They say, I want this done. And then the next level that we look for is, how much are they willing to let go and let us do our thing?
Hmm.
Because I've had people who love story brand, but they are still the experts,
Hmm.
right? And I'm fine if and I've dealt with businesses who have really smart people on the inside. Like there was a stretch, I was with a company for about a year and a half in a variety of different roles. At one point was a fractional vice president of product marketing. They were about 80 or 100 million in revenue, a SaaS company. And there were people who had worked at Microsoft and had been on it, running all over the world with, who's the guy who's now CEO of Microsoft. I'm an Apple guy, so I don't keep up with
Steve,
Microsoft.
was it
Not
Steve?
Steve. Not no. It's gosh, I can see his face. Sat Nadella, right?
I,
Sat. I forget.
yeah,
Anyways, they were. I mean, this guy was personal friends with the current CEO of Microsoft. People had been top at Amazon. I mean, you name it. It was just brilliant people who knew more about business that I could learn in 3 lifetimes. But even then, they looked at me, and I remember one time they asked me to redo their whole pitch deck.
hmm,
I was sitting in a room with the chief revenue officer, chief business development officer, VP of customer success. All of them were my parents' age. VP of sales, director of sales enablement. And they're like, hey, design a deck. We spent 10 hours over the course of a week working on this thing. And every time it came to a decision point, they looked at me. Like, we're hired you. What do you think? Right. So I love those situations where people are willing to lean on somebody else and
hmm.
trust what we're working on and trust the process. If they want story brand and they're willing to trust the process, I mean, that's who we tend to do best. In terms of industry, we do basically everything but consumer packaged goods, because I don't know if you've ever run into this. The consumer goods world, it's just a whole different
Hmm.
beast. And I've done it. I've dabbled in it. We can deliver results, but there's a skill set that I'd simply, for some reason, don't have or can't break through, that other people are much better at than I am. So
Totally.
I'll pass them on. Yeah.
So, two more questions.
Okay.
So, if people want to connect with you, how do they
hmm
find you, Wes?
Sure. So check out our website. It's hire, wayfinder.com. And then you can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Instagram, just Wes Gay. So Twitter, I'm at Wes Gay. Instagram, at Wes Gay. LinkedIn, it's linkedin.com/whatever/whatever Wes Gay. Yes, those are the best places to find me.
All right, excellent. So, what question, Wes, have I
Mhm.
not asked that you wished I would have asked?
Um, I don't think there's really any. I mean, we kind of went all over the place, but yeah, I would. Well, I will say one question. And this is just something that I've just been in the weeds in a bit the last several weeks is what should people be thinking about right now in the
Mm,
quarantine coronavirus season? I don't, I'm not a prophet. Very few people are prophetic, but everybody's trying to be one right now to say, how are we going to live and thrive in a new normal? Nobody knows what a new normal looks like. Nobody. So people can pontificate all they want, but nobody knows. The one thing I would say is make sure that your business is positioned well in the minds of what consumers are dealing with. So everything you and I do, Steve, with Story Brand, take that same approach and think empathy, like we talked about. How has my audience changed now?
mm,
How do I need to position what I'm doing now? When we come out of this, when we're allowed to see each other again, when we can all go to our favorite Mexican restaurant and have chips and salsa, and for me,
yeah,
creamy jalapeno at Chewy's, Tex-Mex,
yeah,
when we're able to do all that again, right, it'll be different. But for right now, how do we better engage and reach the people that are our audience based on what they're dealing with? Marketing is written in pencil, not Sharpie. We're not brain surgeons. We're not cardiac surgeons. We're not trauma surgeons. This is marketing. So your marketing can change and it should adapt to better resonate with the people you're reaching and where they are right now. You do that consistently, I think you're going to have a really healthy business over the long haul.
totally agree. It's just a universal principle of being a parent. What kind of parent you needed to be for your kids when they were 2 years old is different
Mm-hmm.
when they're 6 years old or when they're going through some sort of challenge. And that's the way our marketing should approach it as well. All of us
Mm-hmm.
have clients, all of us have people that we're advocating for, and we need to be understanding and empathetic that what we need to bring them changes
Mm-hmm.
in the stage that they're in. And that
Mm-hmm.
totally agree. Excellent. Well, Wes, I really am, I value you and I appreciate you. And I'm so happy to have you on this conversation. This has been an excellent, excellent conversation. And thank you so much.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so that's a wrap, folks.